after the meeting. Remember to please be polite, keep your phones off, and stay seated during our speaker. Now help me enthusiastically welcome our speaker, Russ.
I'm going to steal this book. Hey everyone, my name is Russ. I am a grateful alcoholic. Just the other day, Tuesday, at a meeting called Principles Before Your Personality, a friend of ours showed us something during the meeting which I thought was kind of interesting. He said that when his speaker spoke, he'd pick up, when his speaker would spoke, he would point at his head and say, bullshit. And then he would point to the big book and say, bullshit, what is it? Fixer, bullshit fixer. So, I'll try to stay with this. Thanks for inviting me. Sierra complimented my shoes, which is nice. I told him I got them from Ross. My wife likes to say Ross for less, but Russ for more. Okay, so my sobriety date is June 27th, 1986. I have one sobriety date, and it's been an interesting ride. I was a firefighter in Mesa for 10 years before I traded that career for a drink. I hear people say all the time, oh, I lost this, I lost this, I lost this. For me, I never lost anything. I gave it all away and traded it for a drink, no matter if it was family, no matter if it was careers. I always traded it for the one thing that I always used, and that was alcohol. I remember my last drink was on June 26th, 1986. I was sitting on the hood of my 1981 Corvette, and I wasn't even drunk. I had a couple tall boy Bud Lights, and I was just contemplating what my life was going to be like starting the next day. I'm not one of those people who go, oh, my life just got so bad, I thought I'd go to AA. That never occurred to me. A judge invited me to go to AA. Actually, he invited me to go to treatment. I was at a 28-day outpatient treatment program in Mesa where I drank and where I got sober. And it was Halloween evening, actually. This is what started it all. Halloween evening, 1985. And I had broken up with, well, that's not true. She kicked me out, this lady that I was living with at the time. And it had been 3 or 4 weeks since I'd talked to her or seen her. And I thought, you know, she's probably dying to see me. So I got one of these little miniature pumpkins and I drew a little smiley face on it. Yeah, she's going to think that's really cute and let me in. And so I went over to her townhouse, which used to be my townhouse. But because of my drinking in a blackout, I don't know how this happened to this day, but in a blackout, I was told that I had signed away my townhouse to her in a quitclaim deed. I just don't recall that. Anyway, so I figured she'd be happy to see me. I rang the doorbell, nobody showed up. Knocked on the door, nobody showed up. I knew she was there because her car was there. She was always there when her car was there. And I thought, well, I know how to get in. No big deal. So I went to the sliding glass door and jimmied it up and started to slide it open when suddenly her face came through the curtains. And her, I'm thinking, all right, she's here. And she said, what are you doing here? Which I did not expect that. And I went, oh, here, happy Halloween. Here's this pumpkin. She goes, what are you doing here? You're not supposed to be here. There's a restraining order on you. I know, but. So what I realized was that she had a new boyfriend. It just came into my head. And I thought, well, I'm going to confront this guy. And so I ran upstairs, and there he is in his underwear in my old bed. And that's when it started. And the next thing I know, we're rolling down the stairs. It's just like a real Hollywood scene. And we hit the bottom of the stairs, and he landed on top of me. And I couldn't get him off of me, because at the time, thank you. I weighed 130 pounds, soaking wet. And he outweighed me by at least 100 pounds. And I couldn't get off of him, so I did what any, self-respecting alcoholic would do, is I took a big bite out of his arm. And that got him to roll off. About that time, the cops came and they choked me down with a billy club, starting to drag me out the door. And just as I'm getting dragged out the door, the paramedics and the firefighters who I worked with were coming in. And I got the look. Really? You'd think that you'd be able to control this crap, but I couldn't. And I thought, well, screw it. So I'm in jail, and I'm about 10 minutes from seeing the judge for my arraignment. And this lady cop was talking to me and trying to get something out of me. And she said, well, why did you attack him? And I said, well, any man would do the same thing, because he's sleeping with my girlfriend. She said, isn't she your ex-girlfriend? Oh, yeah, well, I never mind that. I was drunk, because that was always my excuse. I could always talk my way out of trouble. Oh, I was drunk. I didn't know what I was doing. And the lady cop looked at me and said, well, if you weren't drunk, would you have attacked him? And of course, the correct answer is, oh, no, sir. And I said, you're damn right I would have. And, she obviously informed the judge. And then I got in front of the judge, and he just didn't think I was managing my life very well. And after a big, long discussion, he said, you know what, I'm feeling kind of gracious today, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some options. And I thought, cool, options. And he said, well, I'm gonna send you to prison because your assault was a felony. I'm going to send you to prison, or I'm going to send you to get help. And I thought, help for what? And about that time, what I said to the judge is, well, that's an easy one. Send me to prison. So they kind of looked at me like, what? And I said, yeah, send me to prison. I don't care. Because when I get out, I'll be worse than I am now, and it'll be your fault. Because it was always someone else's fault. So about that time, my lawyer had whispered something about dropping soap in the shower in prison. And I went, hey, Judge, I think maybe I'll do that other thing because I'm way too pretty to be in prison. And he agreed. So they signed me up for this 28-day outpatient program. And the first day I walked in, this facilitator, who she never mentioned it, but she had been in Alcoholics Anonymous for 12 years at that time. And she looked at me and said, you look like a man under a lot of stress. And I thought, who the hell is she to judge me? Anyway, so I thought, okay, well, I'm going to, sit in their little group and let people talk. And when it comes to me, I'll just say, my name is Russ, and I'm here because the judge sent me here. And that's the way it was like for, the first week. And I sat there with my arms crossed. Don't talk to me. Don't look at me. And I was just really, really mad. Anyway, about week 2, this guy came in, and apparently he had been in Alcoholics Anonymous before that. And I'm thinking, well, Alcoholics Anonymous, what the hell is that? This guy, it must not be very good because this guy's sitting here with us. And what he said was, my name is Steve, and I'm an alcoholic, and I cannot stop drinking on my own. And a huge light bulb went on for me, and I thought, oh my God, I'm an alcoholic. I had no idea I was an alcoholic. I just thought I was a nice guy who had 14 years of bad luck. It just never occurred to me. One of my ex-father-in-laws said to me one day, you drink an awful lot of beer. You think you might be an alcoholic? I go, dude, I drink light beer. Are you kidding me? And of course I was serious. Anyway, so when that light bulb went off, I thought, now that I know what my problem is, maybe there's a way to change my life to make it better. Of course, at that time, my life was a shit sandwich. Of course, I didn't get fired. I was allowed to resign. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to do one thing only. And whatever this therapist tells me to do, I'm going to do it. And oddly enough, once I started doing what she suggested, things started like unlocking for me. The last day that I was there, I was actually afraid to leave. Excuse me. And I said to her, hey, can I stay here a couple more weeks? I bet a lot of treatment people did that, right? And I said, I'm just not sure what I'm going to do out there. And she said, well, you can, but I don't think it'll do you that much good. Now you have to go to Alcoholics Anonymous. And I thought, why? Why would I have to go to Alcoholics Anonymous? I've not had a drink or even a thought of a drink. Well, that's not completely true. I haven't had a drink for 28 days. I must be better, right? And had all this knowledge about my disease. I figured knowledge would fix it. Like having a broken arm and knowing that I have a broken arm was going to fix it. Anyway, she said, yeah, you have to attend AA. And I go, I don't get it. Why? And then she reminded me that my probation officer said that I have to go to Alcoholics Anonymous. And I thought, well, okay, happy life, happy PO. And that's what it was like. When I first started seeing this probation officer, of course it was a female, and she would tell me to do stuff, like get court cards signed. And I'm sure I'm not the only one who signed a few on my own. But I started going, and I actually started liking it. I thought, wow, this is really weird. I mean, I looked around at all the people that was in this place. My first home group was in Mesa, of course, and it was the 602 Easy Does It group, and we used to call it the Sicko 2 Sleazy Does It group. And the place had a smoke line 12 inches from the ceiling, furniture that not even treatment centers wanted. It was pretty bad. But I thought, okay. And the first time I showed up, to AA, the only thing I'd ever heard about was this big book. And there was a story on page 449 in the third edition. In the fourth edition, it's on page 417. And I said, yeah, I want to read that big book story on page 449. And he looked at me and nodded his head, and I thought, okay. So I went and I sat down, and I turned the page, and I started reading. And acceptance is the answer to all my problems today. Whenever I am disturbed, it's because I am not, I don't know, I can't remember it exactly, but something in my life I'm not agreeable with. And I read that. And I thought, well, this is a crock. I was always told you pull yourself up by your own bootstraps and you fix your own mistakes. And I thought, okay, this isn't right. And I happened to look up and somebody had slapped a bumper sticker up on the wall that said, this ain't a Burger King. You can't always have it your way. And for some reason that made sense to me. Acceptance, Well, maybe if I can accept that I am an alcoholic, maybe I can get sober. Maybe if I can start to accept life on life's terms, I can be happy. And the only thing that I wanted in the beginning of my sobriety was just to be just a little bit happy. Just sometimes. I didn't want to be greedy. Just a little happy sometimes. And boy, I sold myself short on that one. Anyway, so I continued to go to meetings, and they said go to 90 and 90, and I went to way more than that. I probably went to 3 meetings a day, and on the weekends, they had midnight meetings, which I would go to. I remember the first AA convention that I ever went to was in Phoenix, and I was late, and I was very embarrassed, and I didn't want to walk in the room. I peeked the door open a little bit, but they had already started. I thought, oh my God, one of my things was being late. And so I went in the restroom, and for years I had this bump on my forehead. I never knew what it was from. I just every day I'd shower. Well, not every day, but when I showered, I'd wash my face and I'd feel this bump on my head. And so there I am doing my business, and all of a sudden it dawned on me. Whenever I was drunk and in a bar and I'd be going into the men's room, I would fall forward and hit my head on the wall in the bathroom. And I thought, oh my God, all these years I never knew where that was. Now I know. Yeah. So, not drinking is a whole lot more fun than drinking, because when they talk about drinking as a career, I would be willing to do anything to get that next drink. I constantly planned when I was going to drink, if I was going to drink with anyone, what I was going to drink, and it just went downhill real fast. The first time I ever took a drink, I was a senior in high school. Back in the Chicago area, and I lettered in gymnastics my freshman year, so I really got into that a lot. And my senior year, our coach took all the senior gymnasts down to Eastern Illinois University, and he dropped us off at his old frat house. And I was with my best friend, Rick. And a little while goes on, and this college guy walks up and says, "Hey, we're going to have a party, so give me some money. What do you want to drink?" And I thought, I don't know, because I never really drank before. I did put a swig of cold duck in my mouth one time about a year before that, but I spit it out. I didn't swallow. And I thought, oh my God. I mean, I felt really uncomfortable anyway. I had pimples, and I didn't really know how to talk to girls very well, and I certainly wasn't a dancer, so I thought, well, okay. So I asked my friend Rick, what do you think we should get? He said, well, we could get beer, and for some reason that just sounded horrible to me. And so he said, well, how about some wine? And I thought, you know what? I've seen people at restaurants, swirling their little wine glass and sniffing it. And okay, wine, that sounds respectable. So this guy goes off and he gets these drinks and he comes back. And I had him get 2 bottles, one red wine, one white wine. And the red wine he gave me, I don't know what year it was, but it was really cold. I could feel it was really cold. And as I unscrewed the cap to this Ripple wine, Strawberry Hill, I thought, okay, I know it's going to happen. I'm going to take a gulp of this, and I'm going to puke, and I'm going to embarrass myself. But I thought, okay, here goes. And I took a huge gulp of this cold Ripple wine, and I thought, oh my God. Wow, something happened to me that had never happened to me in my life before. And I'm thinking to myself, where have you been all my life? And boy, all of a sudden, all the pimples fell off my face, and I grew 6 inches. I got taller, and I could talk to these college chicks. It was really cool. Man, I was having so much fun. I fell down 10 flights of stairs 3 times. And I went upstairs. I had to pee so bad. I went upstairs and looking for the bathroom. I find it. Door's locked, of course. And I'm banging on the door. Let me in. I got to pee. And some college guy from the inside said, hey, get out of here. Go piss in a pot. So I'm in the kitchen. And I have this pot, and some other college frat guy just didn't see the humor in that, and literally picked me up by my collar and my belt and tossed me out the door, which had been fine had the door been open at the time. But it was a screen door, so I went through the screen, tumbled down the stairs. I'm rolling around on the grass, and I am laughing my ass off. I'm going, oh my God, this is so much fun. And then all of a sudden, that Ripple and a bottle of Boone's Farm too. Boom, like Linda Blair, projectile vomiting. And it just doesn't go out as smooth as it went in, and I was rolling, and boy, there was so much of it. I couldn't believe how much there was. But I got done, wiped my face off, and I thought, oh, my stomach is empty. I can go back and drink some more. That is not normal drinking. And of course, I didn't know it then, but from the very first time I took a drink of alcohol, I was completely powerless. My life had become unmanageable almost immediately. It was not fun. The next day I came to literally wrapped around the porcelain altar, and I was praying to God, who I didn't believe in. Please, God, the old alcoholic prayer, right? Please, God, let me feel better. I'll never do it again. And for the next 3 months, I didn't have anything to drink. And And then I was at a party where some girl probably jilted me or something. And I'll show her. And I started drinking a bunch of beer. And I was driving this old 1960 Buick LeSabre. And I remember driving home and in this little town, Wheaton, Illinois, and I stopped at the stop sign, but I did a California stop. I just kind of rolled into the middle of the intersection and then passed out. Car still running, passed out. I don't know how long it was, but all of a sudden I hear a knock on the window, and it's Mr. Police Officer. And okay, what? He said, "Are you okay?" "No, not really. I don't feel so good." And he said, "What's the matter? Have you been drinking?" I went, "Yeah," and puked all over his shoes. Now, you would think that any normal cop would drag my sorry Fanny to jail. No. He said, "You feel better?" And I do. And he said, "Where do you live?" And I said, "Well, I live in Glen Ellen Woods," which was a suburban, but he thought I meant I lived in the woods in Glen Ellen. And he said, "Well, look, I'll let you just drive home. Just be careful." That wouldn't happen today. And I said, "Okay." And it just got worse from there. When I was a firefighter, we used to do these Salt River tube trips. And I remember having to buy 2 cases of beer for the Mormons and 1 case of beer for myself because they kept stealing my beer. And I got to thinking, I don't understand. These guys drink exactly like I do, but they're able to get up in the morning, shower, eat a full breakfast. They have nice houses, nice wives, nice cars, and they get promoted at the fire department. I thought, why can't I do that? I just never could. Whenever I would get into trouble, I would climb my way out of that pit, and the first thing I would do is I would celebrate by going out and drinking, which tore everything down again. I would get everything away, trade it for a drink. There was, I'd had a lot of relationships, and but never was there a woman in my life who ever got a chance to complain twice about my drinking. First time they come, bye-bye, and I'm on to somebody else. That's just the way it was for me. I remember one time there was about maybe 7 or 8 guys riding, and we decided to ride up to Canyon Lake. And of course, we had to start with a 6-pack. And once we got there, we'd kill off another 6-pack. Excuse me. And then we rode down to Saguaro Lake, and we were at the end of the parking lot, and you could look down and see the water there. And of all things, there was some girls skinny dipping down there. And I started stripping my clothes off right away, and I went down, and these firefighters go, "Oh man, what's wrong with him?" I go, "Yeah, whatever." And so I just jumped in the water like everything was normal. And then about an hour later, we drove down to the river, the Salt River. And I remember slightly talking to these 2 bikini-clad ladies. and suddenly realizing I didn't have any clothes on. And, I did what any self-respecting alcoholic would do, and I just pretended everything was cool. And then I went looking for my clothes, and my shorts were hanging on my motorcycle, and I drove drunk home. How I got there, I have no idea. Well, I do, thank God. Willingness is one of the things that I experienced early in my recovery. The part in the big book where it talks about willingness is the key that opens the door. And all we have to do is just open it just a little bit, and it'll be really interesting what happens after that. And it was. I became willing to do whatever it took to stay sober. I remember it being at that first home group of mine, and I showed up to this meeting and nobody was there. I thought, well, who is running this place, this AA thing? I'm going to call the president and complain. But as it turns out, I'm sitting there, I thought, well, I'll wait around to see if somebody shows up. And I happened to notice a couple cassette tapes. You guys remember those cassette tapes? And they were sitting on like an end table with this cassette tape player. And I went over and looked at it, and Joe and Charlie's Big Book Comes Alive. And I thought, well, that's interesting. So I picked up the first tape and I put it in. And what I heard was, my name is Charlie Parman, and because of Alcoholics Anonymous, the God I found in this program, it hasn't been necessary for me to take a drink or a mood-altering drug now for 7,482 days, and for that I'm grateful. And I thought, what the hell was that? I never heard anybody talk about that. And I thought, wow. So I listened to three of the 10 tapes. And I thought, you know what? Nobody's here. I could probably take these home. I could always make amends for it later. But I was, let me think. I can't remember. I was a couple months sober when I did my 4-step. And I remember I was living with my mom, and I had this legal pad, and I had a pencil, and I opened the book, and I couldn't start it. I could read the directions there, but for some reason I just couldn't start it. And so I called somebody in the program, Miracles, and I said, I don't get it. I said, I have the big book. I don't have a sponsor, but I just don't understand why I can't get this 4-step started. And he said, well, did you ask your higher power for courage and for help? And I said, no, I did not. And we hung up, and I did a little prayer, and 3 hours later, I've got about 4 or 5 pages of all 3 inventories. And when I got done, I put my pencil down, and I thought, oh, this is why they say get a sponsor. Because the things that I put down, I was not proud of at all. And it kind of freaked me out. And I'm thinking, oh, my God, what am I going to do with this? And so I called somebody that I knew, and I said, look, I finished my 4-step, but I don't have a sponsor. I need a sponsor, and you're it. So I'd like to schedule an appointment tomorrow. And no, I said tonight. Meet me at a meeting, and we'll do my 5th step. He said, well, hold on a second now. What I didn't know was that he'd never heard anybody's 4-step before. And so he said, well, let's make an appointment for tomorrow sometime. And it turns out that all that scary stuff that I had written down, it was almost exactly like like my sponsors. And oh boy, you talk about dropping that bag of boulders off your shoulders. It was pretty amazing. But in the meantime, I just finished that 4-step, and the only thing of value I had in my life at that time, because of course I gave everything away, traded for a drink, was a 1981 Corvette, and I loved that car. Now, so I finished my 4-step, I put my pencil down, I looked, and I remember the old timer said, do the 4-step, do your 5th step, and your life will get better. And I look out the window, and the repo man is hooking up my car. And I thought, well, they said it was going to get better. That's not what they said. They said things will start to change. And so my first thought was, pick up one of my stepdad's guns, put it in my hip, and convince the guy nicely to leave my car. But I thought, I had one of my first intuitive thoughts, oh, wait, you're on probation. Maybe that's not a good idea. I'm not sure if that came from me or somebody else. But so I went outside and I said, please, let me just hold on for 5 minutes. Let me get a hold of the credit union. If they make a deal with me, will you leave the car? And he said, yeah, no problem. So I go inside, I pick up the phone, and there he goes down the street with my car. And I thought, well, God must not want me to have this car so that I can focus on one thing, and that's recovery. And I happened to share that with a group when I was at a meeting a couple days later. And I said, I guess God took everything away from me so I could focus on my recovery. And this old guy, this kind of goofy guy, I called him Crazy Larry. He said, hey, stupid, God didn't take that car from you. If you would have made the payments, you wouldn't have been, repossessed. And I thought, well, that's an interesting concept. Anyway, I remember one time Crazy Larry, somebody gave him the chapter 5 to read. And it was his turn to recite chapter 5, and he put the paper down. He said, rarely have we seen a person fail this thoroughly, followed our path, and went through the whole first 200 words of the chapter 5, and that pissed me off. I thought, you know what? If that cranky old bastard can do that, I can do that. So I went home and I memorized chapter 5, and I couldn't wait for somebody to ask me to read chapter 5, and nobody ever did. Somebody did at one of the conventions down in Phoenix about 10 years later, and I was able to even remember it then. It was pretty interesting. But, I used to get drunk at people to get at them. I was kind of getting sober at that guy because I thought, well, if he can get sober, I can get sober for sure. I remember when I got my 20-year chip, I went back. I was living in Avondale at the time. And I went back to that Sickle 3 group. And I was early, so I went to have lunch. And I thought, I'm going to call my grandmother because she just loves me. And she's just very supportive about my recovery. And this will impress her, right? So I called her up and said, hello, Grandma. I'm picking up my 20-year sobriety chip today. She said, oh, Rusty, that's so sweet. And she paused, and what's the matter, Grandma? She goes, oh, I'm just wondering, I've never had a drink in my life. Do they have a 100-year chip? Instant relief. Yeah. So anyway, I remember going back also to that group, and I was looking forward to seeing Crazy Larry. But I walked in, I asked a couple people, they said, no, he passed away a couple years ago. And I thought, well, that's too bad. I didn't really like him all that much when I first got here. But he kind of grew on me because he said things that pissed me off, but they turned out to be right. And one of the things that he would do is that now he wore this white fedora with a turquoise band on it, white shirt, turquoise pants, turquoise socks, and white shoes. And he had this cane that had all this turquoise embedded in it. And when he'd be sitting listening to somebody share in the room, he would lean on that cane, lean forward, like whatever that person was going to say was the most important thing he could hear that day. And that kind of impressed me. And so many years later, I went back and I said, oh yeah, Larry said some interesting things. And I really appreciated that he paid attention to everybody that was talking. He would sit there and he would lean forward on his cane. And this guy said, oh, you didn't know Larry had a bad back and he couldn't sit up straight. Little lessons along the way. So when I was 6 months sober, I remember telling my sponsor, hey, it's been 6 months. It's time for me to start dating. I worked all my steps, and yeah. And my sponsor said, well, okay, let me know how it works out. And great. So the next day, I'm at a meeting, and my sponsor sees me. Hey, how'd that date go? I said, well, I know the 9-step promises are working. He said, what do you mean? Well, she was amazed before I was halfway through. True story. Yeah, life is funny in sobriety. It'll take you to places you never knew you would go. I think I was at probably maybe 12 years sober at the time. And I started dating this girl. And one day she said, hey, I'm gonna be dancing in this competition over here in Phoenix. Why don't you come along? And I thought, cool. And I wasn't a dancer, not by any stretch of the imagination. As Paul O. said one time, I was not a dancer, and if I was at a wedding, I did not want that, for sure some blue-haired lady would drag me out on the dance floor and prove I was not a dancer. So I went, and I thought, well, that's pretty cool. I'd never do this, but it's pretty cool. But I wanted to impress this girl, so I secretly took some dance lessons. And a couple weeks later, she saw me dancing with somebody at this dance club, and she walked up to me and gave me she made a big deal out of it for everybody else. Oh, she gave me a big hug and whispered in my ear, I don't date dancers, so either you quit or we're done. And I said, well, okay. Say hi to your new boyfriend. It just pissed me off. Don't tell me what I can't do. And so it pissed me off so bad that I started taking more private dance lessons. And about 3 months later, my coach said, hey, there's this competition in Monterey, California. You need to go there and sign up for the novice division. I go, no. I just, want to have a little dance now and then. And he goes, no, it'll make your dancing better. And I thought, okay. I thought, no fear in sobriety, right? If you have fear, walk through it. So I went. And there was approximately 100 guys in the division I was competing in. And those types of competitions, they would line up about 20 females, and then 20 guys would be lined up in front of them, and then they'd roll a dice, and whatever the number won, the ladies would rotate, so you never knew who you were going to end up with. And I won that competition. I thought, oh my God, are you kidding? I could not wait to take that trophy back and shove it in that girl's face. You know, revenge is sweet. The best revenge, they say, is living well. I had, when I was when I was 20 years sober, I found myself, my first sponsor, by the way, drank at 5 years. And that kind of crushed me. But I had a few other guys that, you know, that sponsored me. But when I was 20 years sober, I thought, I got to get a serious sponsor here because, you know, I've got 20 years of sobriety. Wow. And I thought, where am I going to find a sponsor with at least double my sobriety, right? And so I thought, oh, yeah, you know, Crossroads East in Phoenix has this old-timer speaker meeting on Friday nights. And I thought, you know, I'm going to go and I'll bet you I can find a sponsor there. So I get there and there's two old guys sitting in the front row. And I said, hey, who are those two old guys? He said, well, that one is Eddie Wilson, no relation. And I said, how long has he been sober? He said, 42-something years. Well, who's the other guy? He said, well, that's Eddie's sponsor. And I thought, okay. So the way I picked that sponsor was I thought, okay, whichever one I think is going to live longer, and that's how I picked my sponsor, Eddie. He was kind of a pragmatist about recovery. He was from way old school. He had 58 years when he passed. And I liked him because he was pretty straightforward. I remember one time I was dating some gal from Portland, and I knew I had to dump her because she called me up one day and said, oh, I know I wanted to be exclusive, but I just slept with my neighbor. Oh, wow. So, and it kind of broke me up because I'm in sobriety and I'm trying to have a real relationship. And it really bothered me a lot. And so for about 20 years, I was a private investigator. And I was up in Flagstaff doing an investigation up there. And anytime I'd go on a job, I would have a big book, I would have a couple of speaker tapes, and I would try to get to a meeting. And so this thing was still bothering me, so I wrote down a quick 10th step and called my sponsor, and he said, yeah, you got to get to a meeting. And I said, okay. So I went to a meeting, and I called him later on that night. I said, Eddie, I did everything that I'm supposed to do in recovery, and I still feel really, really bad. And he said, yeah, Russ, you know, some days are good, some days not so much. Click. And I thought, okay, that's the kind of sponsor I need. Anyway, thank you for letting me share. I wish you all great sobriety.